Good morning, all. Good morning, Councillor Stewart, and to our members. We've got a couple of people not with us at the moment, but it is 10 o'clock, so we will start. So welcome to today's meeting of the Council Standards Committee. My name is Mike Lewis, and I'm the chair of the Standards Committee. Can I take, first of all, please, apologies for absence?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Apologies from Councillor Graham Thomas.
Thank you, and not a formal apology, but just to update members, unfortunately, Councillor Lyndon Jones, who we were expecting later this morning, is unable to be with us this morning, so it will just be Councillor Rob Stewart initially and Councillor Chris Holly then afterwards. Okay, can we take, please, do we have any disclosures of any personal or prejudicial interests? None indicated. Okay, thank you. So I will move to item 3 of the agenda, and the main purpose of today's meeting, actually, which is to meet with the group leaders and to review the template which was sent out. Rob, good morning. Nice to meet you. Nice to see you here today. And thank you, first of all, for sending back the template. That was helpful. All members will have had an opportunity to read that through, so I don't need you to go through it necessarily in detail because members will have had an opportunity, but I would just like to give you the opportunity, if I may. Is there anything particularly on the form that you've sent in that you wanted to highlight? I say I don't need you to go through the whole thing, but if there's anything particularly you wanted to highlight before we ask any questions, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, look, no, I think the form is self-explanatory. All I would say in terms of the new duty and what is now required, it really doesn't come as much of a change, really. I think that's the reassuring thing, because actually it reinforces the way that we've operated for some time. And, you know, in terms of the obligations that it now lays out for group leaders, I see no change in that at all. I welcome the formalisation of it. And just to draw out, I mean, members will have seen it in the form, in supplementing what is provided in terms of training and support by the council itself. Obviously, as a group, we provide our own training and support, and we've been rolling that out alongside what the council have been doing to try and make sure our members are best skilled, aware and prepared for the term ahead.
Thanks, Rob. Just one question on the form, if I may, before I throw it open wider to other members for any questions that they have. Just noticed I think you've got 45 members in the group, and looking at the numbers for training, you said that there were 10 new members that had been trained on the code of conduct and 27 existing. That adds up obviously to 37. So it begs the question, what about the 8, and what are your plans, please, for picking those up?
Yeah, so at the time of the report being written, obviously that was the position. One of the things that we've tried to query and establish is whether members have opted to take advantage of online training that may not be recorded in that list. So that's one of the things that we're clarifying. Certainly, I've encouraged every group member to attend the training, and of course, when you first become a councillor, you are deluged with months of training. So there are multiple courses. What I didn't want to do was to put anything in there that I wasn't 100% sure of, but certainly that's a discussion I've been having with the monitoring officer and democratic services officers to make sure that we do have that full picture for you.
Okay, I'm going to, before I go ask any more questions myself, just throw it open to other members, whether you have any questions for Rob, please. I'll try to keep an eye on the screen as well. Michaela.
Hello, hi Rob.
Hi there.
Hello. I was just wondering, you were saying that about trying to establish who done what. Do members keep a sort of online training record which is accessible by you? Because I know other organisations do that. So as you do training, you put it onto a sort of record, and then somebody like you can just go in and see exactly what's been done.
Yeah, that is held by democratic services. I guess the challenge for me as group leader is with 45 members. Obviously I'm not there every day to see everything they do. So I rely on the records kept by democratic services to keep that up to date. I guess the challenge that I just highlighted to the chair was there may have been occasions where members have taken online training and then not recorded it or not reported it. And it's just making sure that register is as up to date as possible.
Yeah, sure. Okay, thanks for that. Yeah.
Thanks, Michaela. Janet? You came off mute, then you went back on, Janet.
Yes, thank you, Chair. My question is around standardisation of training and if you benchmark with other colleagues of yours to make sure that you're all training in a similar way.
So I think that part of that is probably for democratic services in terms of how the council creates the training, but I'm pretty sure it's something that we do. From a party position, yes, certainly our training actually has been taken by the National Labour Party in Wales and used as examples, which have been then shared with other Labour groups around Wales. So certainly a lot of the stuff that we did pre-election to prepare people who were interested in becoming candidates and then potentially councillors, prepare them for what that could look like. Certainly that has been passed to Welsh Labour, and then the sort of introductory sessions that we run around, well, actually now you're a councillor, here's what the machine does, and these are the sorts of important meetings and some of the protocols, the stuff that probably isn't written down but is important to understand politically. So yeah, certainly that is something we think we probably contributed significantly to in terms of Welsh Labour's training.
I see, because on page 5 of your report, it says about that you've delivered a number of training group sessions, and I wondered if they were additional to the standard training. I was just for clarification for me. Thank you.
Yeah, they would be additional to what's provided by the local authority. What we try and do is, as a group, we have a regular set of meetings that we get together for organisational purposes, but then we also have sessions where we're able to go into more detail so that members are able to ask questions and bring up issues that are of concern to them, and we supplement that with responsive training sessions. So myself and Chief Whip and the deputy leaders are about to do a refresher on things like collective responsibility shortly. So just as before we come into the budget, so that people understand some of the additional considerations that they need to make when deciding on a lawful budget.
Thanks, Rob. Hugh, did you want to come in?
Thank you, Rob. Thanks very much.
Yes, please, Chair. Just to give us a background to the councillor training and for cooperative training, of course. The Democratic Services Committee has the responsibility for putting training plans in place. That's a piece of work they'll be doing later this year. The reason there is a delay, we've wanted to make sure that the I forget the word, the training programme for new councillors has completely finished. That took about 6 months, and then we're doing the catch-up process. For the catch-up, we're using videos, and as the leader is saying there, with the video process, we rely on the councillor to tell us they've watched it, because we've got no means of knowing if they watched it or not. So once they tell us, we can add it. Of course, we are asking people to update on that. So we're doing a training programme towards the end of this year, which we launch then for the remaining of the 4-year term. That will always be supplemented by things that pop up throughout the year. Just as an example that's come out lately, we're doing training in planning for the new I forget what it's called, the LDP, the local development plan. So things do get added, but it's a simple process in that sense. We have in the past looked at learning styles, learning style analysis, but the reality is when you've got 75 councillors and 10 or 11 co-opted members, everyone wants different things. We haven't got the resource to do it all, so we're trying to make better use of collaboration of training via the WLGA and other bodies and in-house training.
Thanks, Hugh. I'm not seeing any other hands at the moment. So could I ask, Rob, please, in your one-to-ones with your colleagues, what sort of code of conduct issues are being raised? Obviously, I don't need examples or names, but just what sort of issues are raised?
Well, thankfully, it's very rare that we have code of conduct issues being raised. I think, just in terms of consultation and discussion with other group leaders. I think, you know, when you look at the referrals to the Ombudsman and the concerns that were raised, they're significantly lower than they were in historic terms. And I think, you know, I'll leave Councillor Holly to give his view, but I think there's generally a good working relationship between the group leaders. Outside of the theatre of the chamber, which is theatre, obviously, sometimes. And then in terms of dealing with issues that may arise within your own group, again, I would work with my whips, my deputy leaders, try and provide both support to the member and understanding, but also then follow that up with training if it's needed. So we've had a couple of teething issues, I'll put it that way, of people getting a bit confused with the rules, just in terms of, you know, new processes they've not experienced before. And it's about that light touch. Okay, well, let's have a discussion. Why do you think you did that? And what did you think was the right way to do it? And then try and support the member to get the training. And then the next time they go through that process, perhaps they won't get into the same difficulties. So, I mean, thankfully, we haven't had any serious issues to this point.
Okay, and Janet, is that a legacy hand, or did you want to ask anything else? Can't hear you, so I'll
I'm
assume
sorry,
it's
Chair. No, it's a legacy.
Thank you very much. And my last question then, Rob, if I may, is what is your experience of the local disputes resolution process?
Well, as I said, I think it's worked really well. We've had a couple of issues, and they're not limited to one group. I mean, they come up in all groups, I think. But I think we've been successful in, you know, using the group leader resolution stage to try and make sure that groups deal with discipline within their own house without it being immediately becoming an issue that's referred to the Ombudsman or sent up for consideration there. So I think it is working really well, and I think that's borne out in terms of the amount of things that are referred to the Ombudsman which are upheld. And I think that's the point.
Okay, Mark.
Diolch, Mike. Thank you, Rob, for meeting with us today. And just to introduce myself, I'm one of the new co-opted members on the Standards Committee. Sorry to just backtrack a bit, but touching on the training element, and this is something not just for yourself, but perhaps for officers as well. When councillors go through the training, is there an opportunity for them to feedback on how they thought the training worked? You know, did it work? Were there issues with it? You know, was it good? Was it bad? And you know, can we sort of keep track of that? Diolch.
Yeah, I'm sure Mr. Evans will say something, but yeah, absolutely. That's I think that's a normal follow-on process from all of the training that we run. But I think there's another level as well, which is I know I have discussions with Mr. Evans and monitoring officer about, you know, our general view, feedback through our groups then, which may be more informal feedback and sometimes perhaps a little more honest about the sessions, which we then try and feed back in to make sure that the next session's improved upon again.
Touching on the issue about the odd number of councillors that we're not sure whether they've been trained or not, would it be too onerous but once you do know exactly how many have gone through, that you could report back to us that so that we can tick that off?
Yeah, absolutely. That's not a problem. I think. Look, just to reassure, I mean, if people are participating in some of the critical committees like planning and licensing, which are obviously quasi-judicial committees, they need to be trained beforehand. Obviously, those things are followed up very quickly to make sure that people are not participating in meetings that they're not trained for. I guess all training is important, but the lesser important training are some of the ones then where they perhaps have not attended a session and may have gone online and watched, as Mr. Evans said, the video or other training. I think it's just closing that loop, and it's one of the conversations we've been having is how we do that, because I don't see the individual records of each member. but I rely on democratic services to get that. So it's how we close the loop is the important thing. But yes, I would hope that we can give you reassurance that every member has undertaken all of the training in due course.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Thank you, Mark. I'm not seeing any other hands. So just before we wrap up, Rob, is there anything that you wish you'd said that there's suddenly sprung to mind that you want to say to us before you leave?
No, I mean, look, I'm just grateful for the opportunity to come before the committee again, and you know, I'm always welcome. I'm always keen to come back if there's anything you feel that you'd like to discuss, and you know, just thank you for the work that you continue to do. Really.
Thank you. And you may have picked up, Rob, that one of our ambitions for this year, myself and Janet as vice chair, is to meet with group leaders informally as well as this formal session. So we will be looking to do that. I'm very conscious of how busy your diary is, especially at the moment with budgets. We probably will not try to do that in too ambitious a timescale, but probably after the summer holidays, we'll be looking to do something in the autumn, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely, I welcome that. Excellent.
Yeah, Rob, thank you. Thank you very much for your time. You'd be pleased to hear that's the end of the questions. Thank you. Have a good day. Okay, so Councillor Holly's not due with us until 10:30. I just wonder, Tracy, are we in a position to move to item 4, please, as we've got a few minutes spare?
Yes, certainly. Happy to go to agenda item 4, which is the dispensation form, which is on page 26 of the papers. So this was something that was included in the Standards Committee work programme to look at the dispensation form together with the guidance. It was last reviewed, I think, in 2017. So we updated it following some changes to the legislation, and I've attached the old form so that you can see that. It's not actually a bad form. What we have noticed, we had a flurry of dispensations requested after the election in May. And what I did notice as monitoring officer is that some of the councillors weren't quite sure which paragraph to put on the form. So the amended form, which is at page 31, it sets out a little bit more detail as to what the matter is under consideration and what the interest is. I've got some boxes over the page so they can just simply tick those boxes. So again, it's slightly easier for them to fill out. But then I thought I'd add actually some boxes for them to tick around what are the grounds for seeking a dispensation, because that's what they seem to be getting quite confused about. So, you know, we're always there to help them. So it wasn't really an issue, but just in terms of reviewing the actual form, there wasn't too much that needed to be done, but I just thought that would help councillors in terms of actually considering what grounds they wish to rely on. So nothing further to add. I've made some minor changes to the guidance that goes with the form, but as I say, I didn't think there was anything huge in terms of amending the form, but it just hopefully makes it slightly simpler for councillors when they're actually seeking a dispensation. So all I'm asking you to do on page 26 is to approve that amended form. Thank you.
Thanks, Tracy. The only question I had is, have we asked the customer? So have any of the elected members been involved in the redesign? So say, would this help you?
No, they haven't been, but I was hoping that our councillors who are present today might wish to pass some comment. I don't know whether actually they have themselves sought dispensation and whether they've actually had to steer their way through the old form. But yeah, happy to take any comments from our own councillors, and you know, happy to again pick it up with possibly group leaders in terms of whether they're satisfied with them.
Thanks, Tracy. So I will just throw it open. You know, it seems eminently sensible, but as I say, I'm always keen with my background to ask what the customer thinks. So as we've got a couple of customers with us, Mike in particular and Carlo, is this something that you have experience of? You know, does it seem to make sense to the changes that are proposed?
Yes, it does make sense. Personally, I've never had to seek dispensation on any matter. And I'm quite happy with the form. I've looked at it, and it seems a lot less daunting than the last form. So yes, and Tracy, as the monitoring officer, is happy with it. I'm from a legal perspective. I'm more than happy with it. Thank you very much. Cheers.
Thanks, Mike. Carlo, I don't know if this is something that you have experience of, or if you want.
No, not at all at the moment.
Okay, and any other members got any observations or questions? As I say, it seems a sensible improvement, but I'm happy to take any observations before we go any further. Okay, no, well then I think I'll just say, Tracy, thank you for your work. I suppose just formally, can we just show that we are happy to approve the changes, please? There we are. Thank you, Tracy. Thank you for your hard work on that. And good morning, Councillor Holly. You're very welcome.
Good morning. Good morning.
I'm not sure we've met other than at the football. So my name is Mike Lewis.
Hello, Mike.
I'm chair of the Standards Committee.
I did think I've seen you somewhere before. Anyway.
You're very welcome. Can I just check? Would you prefer Councillor Holly, or are you happy with Chris?
I don't care what you call me, as long as it's not too early in the morning. But apart from that, anything, Chris.
Well, I shall keep it to one of those two, either Councillor Holly or to Chris. We won't call you anything else for this morning, but you're very welcome. Thank you as well for your time today. We do appreciate it. And thank you in particular for replying to the template that we sent out a couple of weeks ago. That's really helpful. All members will have a chance to read that, so there's no need necessary to walk us through every line of that. But thank you. We will have paid you the courtesy of reading beforehand. But I would just want to give you the opportunity. Is there anything particular on the form that you've sent in or your covering letter that you wanted to highlight? To say you don't need to walk us through it all because we have read it.
I think the issue, because we've had such an intake of newer members, I think it's been, and we seem to forget that it's only 8 months since the election, which is 8 council meetings effectively for people to learn the ropes. And I think one of the things that I certainly need to have realised is that we've been there a long time, so we know the processes and what have you, and we seem to think everybody else knows it. And it's only when people start asking questions, how things work, that you realise, damn, I haven't covered that before, which we should have done, and it's a learning circle, to be perfectly honest, and have learned it now, and I think that now people are beginning to understand the complexities of how a council works, because there's no other job like it. So you can't have experience before until you join it, and it is picking up the nuances and what the council's about as well, and what it covers, because a lot of people don't realise, from refuge collection to looking after children, it's a massive organisation to learn how to cope with, and I think that's the thing. And I know this may be the wrong thing to say, but I don't think the training we give councillors actually covers it enough. Do you know what I mean? And I think the other thing is nobody knows what you do. It's an explanation to explain to members what the Standards Committee do. It's people that work in the university, or people who work in NHS, or people who've worked in other industries. There's not many that have got the same sort of setup as, and I think one of the things you need to think about in future is, do we need a session where the Standards Committee actually tells members what it's about? So I think there are issues around that we should think about.
Okay,
I know that may not be happy, maybe good news for my colleagues over there, but I think that needs to be said.
Okay, well, I was pleased actually on the return to the template that you sent in to see that all six of your new members went through the code of conduct training as part of the induction process, and indeed the other 12 who perhaps have been longer serving had refresher training. So I was pleased to see that they have benefited from that code of conduct training. I don't know whether Hugh or Tracy want to come in at this stage before I.
The other thing is, I also have got the independents in the group as well, and they do the same thing. They've done the same thing, I hope. I didn't have enough time to chase around and ask them what they've done.
Yeah, just if I can come in just on the role of the Standards Committee and the comments Councillor Holly makes. There is included as part of the Code of Conduct training, which I did a number of sessions on to all the councillors after the election. There is at the end of the training specific reference to the role of the Standards Committee, as indeed there is specific reference to the role of the Adjudication Panel for Wales. It largely is, if you go wrong in understanding the Code of Conduct and you're actually in breach of the Code of Conduct, you are unfortunately going to end up either in front of the Standards Committee, or even worse, you're going to end up in the Adjudication Panel for Wales, where of course their sanctions are much stronger than those that the Standards Committee have. So we do touch upon the role of the Standards Committee in the actual Code of Conduct training.
Thank you. Thank you, Tracy. Okay, so I'm going to throw it open to members for any questions for Chris, please. If you can indicate in the usual way.
Frank.
Yes, thanks, Mark.
Diolch, Chris, for coming along today and speaking to us. And my name's Mark Rees. I'm one of the new co-opted members, so we definitely haven't met before. Okay, whether it's at the football or whatever. Thank you for saying that you want to have more sort of informal contact between yourselves and the committee, and I think Mike has raised earlier that as chair of this committee, he wants to be meeting with all of the group leaders during the council year. But do you think it should be something that the whole committee does with yourself, or are you okay with just meeting with the chair and vice chair?
I think the whole committee would benefit from it. I think, and also members as well, you know, in reality, because it's always better if someone from the outside looks in and tells you where you're either doing right or wrong. And that applies to council meetings as well. You know, it would be, you know, if you came along to the council meeting and watched the performance that the pantomime that goes on in the council meeting, you know, then sometimes, you know, it is. I remember a long time ago, we had someone come along and have a view of a council meeting, and I won't tell you exactly what they said because that was the wrong place to say it, but it was quite entertaining what he said. You know, how much of it is reality and how much is you know is there for an audience, which is the councillors. So you know, it's always better if you get an outside view on what happens in these council meetings, but not, you know, council meetings are a big part, but not the main part. It's the scrutiny boards and the various other meetings, and I think on some occasions it would benefit from members of the scrutiny of the Standards Committee seeing what the workings of these various committees is.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
And just more thing. So apologies. You mentioned in the actual template and in an attached email to Tracy, you talked about issues to do with clash of interests, if you like, between your role as an elected member and in the management of the council, and you specifically highlighted in case there were redundancies that you had to make decisions on. I just wondered if you could expand a little on that and what you felt our role was in that.
I think it's quite a. I think if you look at, especially the role, full council will make a policy decision, and that policy decision could result in redundancies, or at the least, you know, there'll be job changes and what have you. And I think there's an issue that many of us have got relations, or we've got friends or something who work for the council, because, you know, at the end of the day, it's a big organization. So it's that role about how you declare an interest if there's going to be redundancies, because you could be part and parcel of that decision to make someone you know redundant. So I think that's part of it. The other part is when you're scrutinizing a particular, let's put it this way, if we scrutinize the budget, and in that budget, you know there's going to be either compulsory redundancies or bump redundancies or whatever, do we then have to declare an interest if we know people in that department? And we haven't up until now, because a redundancy is a management issue, not a policy issue. But the policy's made, we scrutinise the policy, and that policy could enforce someone to be made redundant. I think it's that area that I think elected members need to be confident that you in the Standards Committee, and dare I say it, in the wider community, realise what the difference is. And I think that's something that we need to think about in the future, because in all honesty, the budgets currently are such that that's likely to happen in the future, you know.
Thanks, Mark, for raising that. I was going to pick up on that later, Chris, but let's cover it now as it's come up. I suppose when I read it yesterday, there was a couple of things went through my mind. Firstly, as I understand it, the budget hasn't yet been approved by full council. It's been through cabinet, but not through full council. So as we sit here today, factually, the budget hasn't actually been approved. But even when it is, I think we'd have to put on record that the Standards Committee don't have a view. We have to be impartial in terms of that budget and any ramifications that fall out of it. So I think it's a pertinent question, and I'm grateful to you for clarifying it, because the Standards Committee has a particular role in terms of making sure the code of conduct is being observed. And I've always said in the 4 years I've been on the committee, I always prefer prevention rather than cure. I would always rather be looking at training and education rather than sanctions and consequences of somebody inadvertently or otherwise breaching the code. So I'm grateful to you for clarifying what you meant by that, because I wasn't sure what the role of the Standards Committee was on it. Tracy, can I bring you in? Because it is a fair point. I think now that we've clarified what the issue is, it's more around guidance for councillors if they find themselves in that scenario. But as I say, I do want to be clear that the Standards Committee doesn't have a role and has to be impartial in terms of the budget and its ramifications if and when it's approved.
No, absolutely, Chair, and I endorse that. There's nothing in the Standards Committee terms of reference relating to the budget, so that there's no remit for the Standards Committee. Just in terms of interest, Councillor Holly will be aware that prior to council meetings, I do normally send out an email as to my advice on interests. I cannot give advice to each and every councillor on what their particular interests may be, and the code is quite clear that it is up to individual members to decide whether or not they do have a personal interest, and secondly, whether or not that personal interest may be prejudicial. But I do try and offer them some guidance as to the sorts of things they should be looking at, which will include whether or not they've got family members that may be directly impacted by the budget. So I do give that advice, and I do operate an open door policy that if any councillors are concerned about their interests, and there is usually a flurry of activity in the days before any council meeting, cabinet meeting, scrutiny meetings, where I do get quite a few emails coming in. Oh, I think I might have an interest. Can I possibly discuss it with you? So I am there to offer any advice, as is actually Hugh as well. He often gets queries from councillors. So we do give that advice, but obviously we can't give advice to each and every single councillor because we don't know their own circumstances. That's all I would say. We do try our best to help. Whether there needs to be specific training, probably not, because it is very individual as to whether councillors have got their own interests.
Thanks, Tracy. Janet, you've got your hand raised.
Thank you, Chair. Chris, if I could just ask a question that I asked Rob Stewart just before you came in. It's around standardisation of training, and whilst I understand that the training is the same across the board. I'm interested in the process, and I wondered if it would be beneficial if you've looked at maybe benchmarking with other political groups to look at that kind of standardization, not just what the training is, but how it's delivered, if that would be a beneficial thing that maybe the Standards Committee could look at to ensure that everybody's being trained to the same standard.
I think the problem is, who do you benchmark it against? I think that the training, that's a difficult question to answer, in as much as there are people. I think at the beginning of every new term, you have to have a quantity of training, and you have to have a quality of that training. Yes, but how you would benchmark it, I'm not quite sure. Now, do we bet, the training is open to all members of various political groups anyway. We don't have a training for Lib Dems, Independents, Conservatives, and Labour separate. The training is a mixed with all members anyway. But I'm not sure how you'd perhaps if you want to benchmark it against what happens in Lisa Talbot or Carmarthen, or possibly not Powys, but if it would be quite difficult, I think, to do it. I think the only one, I do know the Welsh Local Government Association many years ago used to have a training manual. I don't know if they still do it, but they do they, Tracy? They used to have it, and I can't remember the guy who used to do it now, but they used to have a standardized throughout Wales. Now, whether or not, I know for a fact there's many authorities never followed that. So, I know we in Swansea, and I know Cardiff and Nathan Talbot used to follow that, but I'm not sure about anywhere else. So benchmarking it against what the standard in the WLGA used to do, I think is what we've done. Now, I don't know if you could do it in any other way. I'm not sure. Hugh, perhaps you would know. I don't know.
Yeah, do you want to come in, Hugh? I suspect that you could say something in terms of the standardised training. I suppose there may also be an issue, which is perhaps what is in Janet's mind, about over and above. So that which group leaders, perhaps Rob are doing or Lyndon is doing, with over and above. But do you want to come in terms of the standard training first?
Of course. Right. Firstly, myself as head of Democratic Services I have a legal duty on training for councillors and co-opted members, and that whole duty sits with the Democratic Services Committee. So they're the ones responsible for planning, for training, not Standards Committee. So I've got to make sure I separate those lines. For joined up training and consistency and what we're looking at, we work very closely with the Welsh Local Government Association. We have worked together for this year, the 2017 to 22 term. We've put together e-learning across Wales. Each authority in Wales were responsible for one module, and those models then were shared throughout Wales to make sure that they were consistent and they were rolled out. We took responsibility for the Welsh language one, which I was personally involved in. They are e-learning. When you get to physical training, the non-e-learning ones, of course, there is a local choice element because we're looking to plug those areas specific. However, for argument's sake, the code of conduct issue, it's still, whilst we training might be different, it's all stemming from the same umbrella document. So the consistency is there. Maybe the delivery style is different. Maybe the slide order is different, but the message is consistent. And that'll be the same for planning, LDP, licensing. The style might differ, but the consistency across Wales is based on legislation, and that is consistent.
Thanks, Hugh. Did you want to come in, Tracy, please?
Yeah, if I can just add to that, the code of conduct training, WLGA did send slides around for monitoring officers. So it is fairly standardised. What I did with mine was to pad it out. So they were, I spent a lot more time actually on the role of the standards committee, etc. So I did actually pad it out because I thought there were some gaps in it. Other monitoring officers may have gone with the actual WLGA, or they may have padded it out similar to myself. But as Hugh said, you very much get a template, and then it's up to you whether or not you add to it, detract from it, or put your own style into it. But it is fairly standardised, actually, I would say. And as Hugh quite rightly points out, you know, you've got the code of conduct, it is what it is, and you've got the Ombudsman's guidance, it is what it is. Fairly standardised, I would say.
Thanks, Tracy. Councillor Mike Lewis, I see your hand.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's just a question for Councillor Holly. Can Councillor Holly confirm you will provide feedback to this committee on the training records of the independent members of his group, which he indicated earlier that he was unsure of the current position?
I can do that. I can probably do it by the end of next week.
Thank you, Chris.
Sorry, Hugh.
Thanks.
So just to help everybody on this, the training records for all councillors are published online and are available at all times, at any time, to anybody. You can look yourselves, swansea.gov.uk/councillors, and then in that list you will be able to find training, code of conduct, interest, all the information about councillors will be there. So it's already available. I can produce that document for you within moments, Councillor Holly.
Thanks, Hugh. I'm not seeing any other hands at the moment. So I've just got two more questions, if I may, Chris, please. When you talked either individually, one-to-ones, or in your group, I just would be interested, what code of conduct issues are being raised? Obviously, don't name names or anything, but what sort of issues are coming up?
Family connections is probably one. And I think that's probably the biggest one. And I think the other one is procedural matters. But the biggest issue of all is when Tracy sends around her email, I normally get a few questions about, you know, do we have to declare an interest? You know, because my sister's brother or my sister's brother-in-law is so and so. Well, it's not directly involved, you know. And I think that's the biggest one about the code of conduct and general behaviour as well. And that has improved by a huge margin.
Okay, and the last one from me, and it may be linked actually to your last comment there. What is your experience of the local dispute resolution process?
I wish it had been in place many years ago. It would have saved a lot of time and a lot of arguments. But it is well worth having. We haven't used it for a long time, but many years ago it would have been a godsend, to be perfectly honest with you. But as I say, we haven't used it for a long time. Generally speaking, we don't have any issues. You know, I think it's down to personnel now. It's slightly different than what it was many years ago. And I won't mention names on that one. Definitely not.
Sorry, Margaret, I missed your hand.
Hello there, thank you. Good morning, Councillor Holly. Thank you for attending and raising some very interesting points, I think, in this morning's meeting. I'm looking really for a bit of clarification. It says on the document that you filled in that there are 18 members of the group that you lead. Now then, that's Liberal Democrats and Independents included together, is that correct?
Yes.
So, in the response that you gave, it did indicate that basically, is it all of the members have been trained on the code of conduct, or does the 12 who have been trained on the code of conduct include the 6 new members?
All the new members have been trained in it, including the independents, as far as I know. I haven't did any different to that.
You are in a unique position, really, in the sense of a group leader, in that you're not just the group leader for one, particular political party. Does it provide you with any particular challenges, the fact that you have your group leader for a group that includes independents as well as the Liberal Democrats?
More than you can imagine. When I was leader of the authority and I took over, my mentor that was supplied by the WLJ, by the, well, it was the English LA, he said, you will learn how to herd cats when you become a group leader or leader of a combined groups, and he was perfectly right. It is not easy. Even with my own in the Liberal Democrats, they're not the most disciplined organisation in the world, and there are more ways of dealing with people than shouting. You know, you have to be very sensible and bit diplomatic, and that applies to everyone in the group, regardless of political affiliations. You know, so yeah, it can be difficult. It's a bit easier now than it was a few years ago, but you know, it can be difficult.
Okay, well, thank you for clarifying the numbers. I wasn't quite clear. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thanks, Margaret. Did you want to come back in here, please?
Yes, please. Just to give some clarity with regard to the independent councillors, there are 7 of them. The 2 newly elected councillors in May 2022 have both been trained in code of conduct, and the remaining 5 who are returning councillors were trained prior to May 2022 in code of conduct.
Thanks, Hugh. Okay, so apart from Margaret's legacy hand, I'm not seeing any other hands. So, Chris, you'd be pleased to hear that's the end of our questions for today. But as Mark alluded to earlier, you may also have picked up that one of our ambitions for the next year, myself and Janet as vice chair, is to start meeting informally with group leaders as well as this formal session. Now, I know it's a very busy time at the moment with budgets and et cetera, and even with after that with the holidays, etc. So our ambition is to do that probably in the autumn, but we would hope to put those in place, say as well. That won't replace the formal sessions, but myself and Janet as vice chair would welcome the opportunity to meet with you individually as group leaders. But for today, thank you very much for your time, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you, Chris.
Depends on the weather, I think.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you. And I think, unless I've missed anything, that is the end of today's meeting. Thank you very much, especially for members remotely and in the room for your contribution. I think it's always helpful when it's not just the chair asking the questions. So thank you very much for your contribution. And we're due to meet, I think, hopefully in a couple of weeks' time on another matter. But for today, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Chair.